Milwaukee. This is today's TMJ4, live at daybreak.
Our priority has always been what's for the people of the state of Wisconsin. And I can promise you this, I'll be focused on solving problems, not picking political fights. I will never make promises I cannot keep, and I will always work for you.
This morning, State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Evers, the projected winner in the race for Wisconsin governor, defeating the incumbent Governor Scott Walker by a narrow margin. Here is a look at those numbers. This is with 99% of the vote counted. You see Evers getting a 2% better of Scott Walker at 50% for Evers, and Governor Walker at 48%.
And the race was extremely close all night as the numbers came in. They went back and forth. The AP ended up calling the race for Evers at just 1:30 this morning.
Governor Walker held a slight lead before a significant chunk of absentee ballots were counted in Milwaukee County. Our Rebecca Clough was there when those results were read.
Total ballots cast, 399,146. We were waiting for the absentee ballots of 47,463 to come in from the city of Milwaukee, and we have those. So we are now officially at 100%.
100%. And what were those, can I know what those official results were once more time? What did it go for Walker? What did it go for?
Sure. For Walker, for that 47,463, he received 7,181. And the Democratic candidate Evers received 38,674.
And so Governor Walker did not speak overnight, but just before Tony Evers was projected the winner, Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefisch did speak on behalf of the campaign.
It is with respect for the democratic process and concern for the plight of every hardworking family in the state of Wisconsin that this morning we are preparing for the likelihood of a recount here in the state of Wisconsin.
At 6:02 for more on this historic election, we're going to go to our Lauren Winfrey now in downtown Milwaukee.
Hey, good morning, Susan. This was the state of Wisconsin. Reporting outside of the Milwaukee County Courthouse, Lauren Winfrey, today's TMJ4.
All right, thanks for a look at the race there, Lauren.
Yeah, and as we indicated, Governor Walker did not come out and speak last night. We think that he remains at his hotel in Delafield this morning.
And so that's where we have our Sean Gallagher. He is waiting to get a response from Governor Walker this morning, and no sight of the governor yet, Sean?
Yeah, Susan and Vince, I haven't seen any sight of the governor himself so far. This coming up this morning. In Delafield, Sean Gallagher, today's TMJ4.
All right, we'll certainly check back, Sean. Thank you very much.
At the live desk, Southeast Wisconsinites vote website, TMJ4.com.
Well, we want to get you some other important numbers this morning.
Storm Team 4 meteorologist Brian Niznansky is looking certainly at a cold stretch of weather ahead. You have too many threes in your forecast for my liking.
On the front end.
33 in Glendale.
Yeah, not enjoying those.
Is 32 better? Wauwatosa 32.
It's not.
Dallas at 32. Milwaukee at 35. This morning across southeastern Wisconsin.
Light delay, 6 minutes.
All right, looking good. Thanks very much. It's now 6:07.
And we'll be back right after this. It's 10 minutes after 6 here on today's TMJ4. There is one big statewide race that has yet to be called this morning. Right now, federal prosecutor Josh Call leading Attorney General Brad Schimmel by a very narrow margin. This one could remain inside that 1%, which would allow for the losing candidate to ask for a recount. There's also been talk about a recount in the governor's race, so we want to break down that possibility and talk about all that.
Yeah, so to join us this morning to talk about that and just what the rules are for a recount in the state of Wisconsin, because they can vary by state, is attorney Mike Mastelman. Mike, thanks so much for waking up with us early. I know you had a late night following all the election results, so we appreciate your time this morning and your expertise.
Good to see both.
Okay, so let's talk first about the governor's race. We'll get to the attorney general's race in just a moment. So that is a close race. Tony Evers won by about 30% of the vote at this point. The AP called
30,000 votes.
30,000.
Right.
Sorry about that. Thanks for that clarification. 30,000. That's a big deal. So is that enough where Governor Walker could ask for a recount?
So Governor Walker is actually a victim of the legislation that he and the Republicans passed last year, which would not allow anybody to request a recount if their margin was above 1%.
Mm-hmm. That was a change after the 2016 when you had the challenge for the presidential results.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
So at this point, then that would be out of something that they could do. And so if these results were to stand, then Tony Evers is the governor of the state.
I can't declare that, but yeah.
Right. Well, we've talked about the results not being official until there's a canvass. Can you go through that? That's something that occurs over the next couple of days where the results eventually become official. Is there any possibility of movement as we officially count those votes?
So the canvass takes place over the next few days where they just go over the numbers that they had on election night, double check everything. But typically there's no change. There really isn't. I mean, it's de minimis if it is.
Right.
So in the Attorney General's race, that race is extremely close this morning, too close to call. Could there be a recount in that race?
Well, if it's 1% or less between the difference between the two candidates, yeah. And if it's, but interestingly, the candidate who requests the recount would be forced to pay the entire cost of that, which would be pretty cost prohibitive.
What else is involved in that process of asking for a recount?
Right, so you file a petition requesting a recount from the various municipalities around the state. And then the clerks in the various municipalities will come together with what it would cost to do that, and then the candidate has to put down that amount of money in advance.
All right, we want to talk a little bit more about how that process will look. So Mike, stick around and we'll visit with you again in our next half hour.
Thank you.
Hash that over, but thanks so much for coming in after like a brief nap overnight.
It's okay.
So if you are looking for a race in your community, a lot of school districts posted referendum questions. You can search all those results this morning at tmj4.com/thevote.
6:13 on today's TMJ4. Up next on Live at Daybreak this morning, we're going to take a closer look at the state's 6th congressional district.
Up next, the winner, Congressman Glenn Grothman, will join us live in the studio to talk about his 3rd term and the change of power in the House of Representatives. And before we head to break, Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin will spend the next 6 years in Washington. She beat Republican State Senator Leah Vukmir by double digits, 55% to 45%.
You're watching today's TMJ4 with Susan Kim, Vince Vitrano, Elise Preston, and Storm Team 4 meteorologist Brian Miznansky.
Republican Congressman Glenn Grothman will stay in Washington. He beat Democratic challenger Dan Cole in Wisconsin's 6th district by a healthy margin, 56% to 44%.
And we put an invitation out to all the winning candidates to join us live here on Live at Daybreak. And Congressman Glenn Grothman is here with us this morning. Congressman, congratulations. This will be a little bit different look for you in Congress. It'll be your 3rd term, but the first time in Washington serving in the minority as the House flips control to the Democrats. So talk about what that difference will be for you as you move forward.
Well, it's going to be more difficult to get to tackle the big problems, things like immigration, things like welfare. But I was in the minority when I was in the state legislature. I've always been able to get along with people on a bipartisan basis, and it is very rewarding to accomplish things when you're in the minority, and I look forward to doing that as well.
Well, the fact that the House flipped, does that send a message to you? And what does your 3rd term look like in terms of your priorities now?
Well, I think the same sort of things. I think we want to weigh in on the size of the budget. I think we want to have some influence as they tweak the tax bill, because I used to do taxes. And quite frankly, a lot of what we do is we influence the administration and the administrative agencies, and I hope to be able to do some of that.
I want to give you a chance to pat yourself on the back as well. It was a tight race. It appeared to be in the polls. You talk so often about the need for the grassroots movement, and you feel that that turned out in your favor, and that was the difference in this race.
It did well. Partly was the message we had, but partly I think I had a stronger grassroots campaign. It's always scary to go up with somebody who's going to outspend you like I was outspent, but it shows that, you know, money doesn't always win out in politics.
You know, we did some exit polling that showed health care was the most important issue that people voted on in this election. What do you see health care looking like for you?
Well, hopefully we'll have more joint plans, that sort of thing, so that you have lower costs. Large companies are able to take advantage of the size of the pool of people that they provide health insurance to. We have to have more larger pools, because right now health insurance is just too wildly expensive, particularly for people in their 50s or 60s.
Well, last question for you, and we appreciate you coming in this morning. Let's look at the state of Wisconsin. You served in the state legislature for many years. You have Tony Evers, the projected winner today, and it appears he'll be elected governor and declared so. How does that change things, in your view, for the state of Wisconsin?
Well, I think Tony ran on two things. He ran on changes to education. I think Scott Walker put a lot of money into education, and he did do something making it easier to get rid of an underperforming teacher. And obviously, Tony wants to undo those things. The other big issue in the race was the amount of money we're spending on roads. So I think we'll look forward to some sort of increase in spending there. But I worked with Tony Evers when I was in Madison, and I think I'll be able to get along with him, though it's very sad for Scott Walker. He was a great governor, but he didn't run that good of a campaign.
All right, Congressman Glenn Grothman, congratulations again on your victory, and thanks so much for making time with us this morning.
Glad to be on the show.
Appreciate it. Over to Storm Team 4 meteorologist Brian Niznansky, who's looking at a cold stretch here ahead.
Yeah, sure is. This is a live look downtown in Milwaukee. Clouds overhead.
6:23 now, and up next on Live at Daybreak on today's TMJ4, we're going to look at some of the pivotal races around the country,
including closely watched races in Florida, Texas, and Georgia. Now to the vote America's Future. Democrats celebrating a power shift this morning after winning control of the House in a dramatic midterm showdown.
But Republicans will retain control of the Senate. Senator Ted Cruz held off challenger Beto O'Rourke in Texas. And in a couple other closely watched races, Republican Ron DeSantis will be Florida's next governor. And in Georgia, at last check, the governor's race between Republican candidate Brian Kemp and Democrat Stacey Abrams was still too close to call. 6:26 up next on Live at Daybreak on today's TMJ4. So what happens now?
Election law attorney Mike Mastelman is going to join us live once again in studio discussing the possibility of a recount in some key statewide races, including the one for governor. What would have to happen there in order for Governor Walker to ask for a recount?